Hi there, Louie Martinié. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show. Could you give us a brief biography of yourself, please?
Oh my God, let me see. Okay, I started out with ceremonial magic in a group, Bate Cabal is what we formed. Had an occult shop, sold ritual robes, particularly ritual robes. And my main contact was with Aleister Crowley. And Crowley, oh my God, we were practicing for maybe 2 or 3 years. And his autobiography, his book, has his picture in a Star of Babylon. And no drugs, nothing like that. I simply did something that now would be very questionable. I gave one of my lovers to another practitioner.
Oh,
As soon as I did that, the picture in the book came out and went, Jesus, right into me. And I'm like, whoa. And there's this presence, and I hear this voice going, I recommend you to Alan Bennett. And I went, ugh. For 3 days, I was in a state that I wasn't thinking. My mind wasn't working. Yet I was moving and doing everything that was necessary. It was moment to moment to moment, and then it wore off. And then I looked up Alan Bennett. I knew very little about Alan Bennett. I mean, I was doing ceremonial magic. I was doing Crowley. We had our temples. We had this, we had that. And it said Buddhism. And I thought, no, I don't know about it. Let's look into this later. Okay, so that happened. And then it just went on with Bate Cabal. And Bate Cabal is interesting too, in and of itself, in that Bate it's a little inside joke. Little joke. It's like bait is what a hawk does when it tries to leave its perch. It's flapping, it wants to get away like that, to move up, up. And most people, and it's a play on Beth, the Hebrew alphabet. I went to Hebrew Union University and to study really Hebrew, to know Kabbalah, and I got the medieval Hebrew, and at this point, some of it is there and some of it is gone. So went from that, then Maggie with the Cincinnati Journal of Magic, Nema. At the occult shop, I'm saying this is about 1970, right around in there, something like that. I'm sitting in the shop and we're getting all this stuff from these gurus from the East, right? It's crazy. I mean, there's got to be something coming from the West. And that is when we thought to start the Cincinnati Journal of Ceremonial Magic. And in doing that, we're sitting here. I'll show you a photo. I found some photo, which is sort of neat. Here's the Black Moon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's from maybe 1970, right around in there. And there's Maggie. There I am on the, I guess you would call that the right side, and Joe on the left side. And this is a loft that we lived in. And yeah, then we did the first journal, and she received a transmission. We published it. She had a lot of contact with Kenneth Grant. And the last time I saw her was about 2 or 3 years ago, right before her death. Did a ceremony with the Mahdi. And I love the Mahdi and current because of Maggie's optimism. She just exuded this sense of, yeah, you do the work. Well, you do the working, capital working. You do the work then, and then it'll be okay. That kind of optimism.
You get that kind of feel of optimism when you read her work as well, don't you? She had a very kind of optimistic writing style as well, I found.
Oh my God. Here's a cool thing here too. Here is I've got some pictures. Maggie.
Oh yeah, there she is. Yeah.
And the way I work with her, if anybody wants to do it, it's fine too. I mean, we're sitting there at the table drinking coffee. 90% of the time we were sitting at the table drinking coffee or in the temple doing stuff. If
Mhm.
you want to make contact with her, you know, get a hold of me or just simply find a photo of her, put it up, put a coffee cup in front of her.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, let's drink coffee together and let's talk. And just see what the hell happens, you know?
Yeah, Nema's an interesting. I used to be in the OTO myself a long time ago, and I started to become more interested in the kind of what I call like the Crowley adjacent kind of characters from within the the Thelemic world. Obviously, like Kenneth Grant, Bertio, like the Fraternitas Saturni, and then obviously Nema. Nema's a kind of a name that pops up very quickly when you start looking around the kind of you know
Yeah.
the people. I mean, Frater Arcad's another one, but so tell us who was Nema? Like, give us a bit of a kind of, if you can, a bit of a potted biography of who she was and what was she about, that kind of thing.
Uh, she always looked a bit like a suburban housewife, which was interesting because she could do so much sacrament that everybody would be under the table. Everybody else would be under the table. Uh, when we first got together, of course, it was with Black Moon Publishing or Conquering Child Publishing back then. And there's a loft. I would, I'm a musician, a drummer. I joined the musicians union in about 1976. And after gigs, about 2 a.m., I and some of the other people in the band would go over to her house, which was this little suburban house. You go in there and sit there at the kitchen table, drink coffee, talk about magic, talk about this, talk about that. And that is a big part of who she was. She would invite anyone in. And there was things going on there that really should be kept private. And I remember one time sitting there, this man comes in a full police uniform. And I go like, huh? And Maggie goes, hey, John, sit down. And he's sitting there talking about ceremonial magic and all this and everything else. And then it moved to Bate Cabal. And in Bate Cabal, well, initially it was a left cabal. We were all together. Then, like a lot of these organisms, like an amoeba, it
Mhm.
gets large enough, it splits, became a left cabal and Bate Cabal. And Bate Cabal was more interested in publishing, more interested in disseminating the word, like the Cincinnati Journal. And at the same time, I was playing in a band called Bitter Blood, and it was a Thelemic band. It was one of the first Thelemic bands. I mean, you can find it. We had a regular lineup. We had oh God, we had a dog's head on a stick, which was the eighth member of the band. And the idea was this was Gottlieb. This was God's love. I was, and a lot of other people were sort of a nihilistic phase back then. And it was that the Socratics took the life of the dog, and the Dionysians were going to worship it. Now, Maggie was all a part of all this. And at the very, very beginning, now it just occurred to me, go very, very, very back to the very beginning. She came over to a house that we had, a profess house it really was, with the temples and everything like that, and developed a relationship with one of the magicians there. And he said to her, uh, women cannot practice magic, which he knew. He knew because he had some wisdom, beyond knowledge. He had some wisdom. He said, if I say this to this person, she's going to really just go right into it.
Mhm.
And she did. She went head over toes into it, into the magic. That was really the beginning there. That was really the beginning. Yeah. Yeah. Then everything that I talked about before came after that.
So,
And she, to the very end, to the very end of her life, the last ritual I did with her, the feather, the priestess of Maat. And I think that one of the best things that she said was, look, just use the system. It will work for you or not. You know, validity, all this other stuff, just use it, experience it. If it works for you, use it. If it doesn't, then you don't. And at some point after that, it's got to self-destruct. I think what she was pointing to there, I've got a lot of the correspondence between Mr. Grant and Maggie because we're so close and with Black Moon and that. And she got, I remember Kenneth Grant writing to her saying, Maat is more than the magic. Maat is more than this, more than this, more than this. Maat is even pre-consciousness. That Maat exists there. And that is what I work with in terms of Maat. Maat can be a gateway to the Ains on the tree of life. Ein Sof, Or. And that is pretty much where things stopped. I was with Mike, her husband, shortly before his death, too. He lived a bit longer than Maggie. He always saw his work as taking care of Maggie. And I'm very happy to have been there and to see the beginning, the middle, and the end of that whole phase. To be part of the beginning, middle, and the end of that whole phase. And to see it being carried on by the Horace Mott Lodge, the work being carried on. And I'm part of the Horace Mott Lodge, which, along with my main practice, is New Orleans Voodoo. And it all fits very, very well together.
Yeah, I was going to talk to you about that a little bit later, but I'll bring it up now, which is, how did you sort of segue from, well, sort of, move across, well, I guess incorporate voodoo into a kind of more Thelemic system, I guess?
Yeah, I was, again, one thing that has stayed with me is the drumming. And it was a performance, and I was going through all the moves and all the stops and all the starts and all of this and all of that. And I realized I was feeling nothing. I just wanted to get back into the dressing room and read the paper. And I went like, okay, let's look at something else. I was looking for something that incorporated drumming in a deeper sense. And in doing that, I made contact with some Palamayumbe people, studied with them, got all these documents and things like that, studied with a number of practitioners, that would speak to me in that. And then Legba came to me as an old beggar. And it was this experience, Legba, the actual experience. And that pointed me toward New Orleans. He had a New Orleans feel to him. And when I got to New Orleans, I just sat with this old conjure woman. I went there and I said, I'm interested in this, and this, and I have this experience. And she just looked at me. She didn't say a word. And she looked down and kept on going. And I just sat there. And I came back the next day and just sat there, and she ignored me. And I came back the next day and she said, okay, you can talk a little bit. And then she told me, some things. And then what was the Cincinnati Journal? Then I moved more or less permanently for about 30 years to New Orleans. And in moving, I met, there was a radio cast going on, and I was asked to attend it, and Priestess Miriam and Priestess Chamani were there. And Ashwan Chamani was a speaker. He was speaking. I was there sort of like to fill in if there was any dead air or anything, with the drumming. And Ashwan Chamani was speaking, and he was with an anthropologist. And someone had, of course, told the anthropologist that the thing to do is to be combative. That will interest people. So the anthropologist was very combative. Ashwan just sort of sat there, this, and this. Well, the anthropologist was saying, well, maybe it's this, that. And at one point, Ashwan took out a deck of cards. This is a radio, right? Took out a deck of cards and started playing solitaire, which is dead air. The host didn't know what to say, and the anthropologist just stopped. And the host goes, well, what is the first? What is the first mystery? And the anthropologist said, death, understanding death. That is what brought people to this. And Ashwan's playing cards, right? He's playing cards. And he says, not death, maybe birth. I was like, okay, I'm with them. And have been in service to the New Orleans Voodoo Temple for 30 years, something like that, around 30 years.
Now, Nema had a very powerful experience happen to her, involving an entity or either an entity or deity called Mart that you've mentioned already. Do you want to give us a kind of rundown of who Mart is or what Mart is, and then we'll talk a little bit about what happened with Nema.
Yeah, this Mart, and I can only speak from my experience. I have the experience is an important thing. Mart is the aims, is the nothing, Ein Sof, limitless nothing, limitless open space, Ein Sof Aur, limitless space, permeated with light, with aliveness, with creativity, conscious creator, which gives rise to the tree, flows like light, like liquid light, creating the sephiroths, creating the tunnels, creating all of that. That's what Mart is to me. And one of the initial contacts, the really important contacts, was through Natan, which was at a ritual that I don't know what my title was then, Master of Ceremonies or something like that. I was like doing the thing. And we're sitting there going through what we said we were going to do, and all of a sudden another entity shows up. And Herb, who is a very respected Kabbalistic scholar, and Maggie felt the presence of this entity, which was Natan, gave the name of Natan to Maggie. And that he was something, a force from the future that was there to be of assistance. Now that's sort of translated into a magus from the future, which is fine, just words from the future that was there to provide assistance. And that he provided a means or a pointing to access to Ma'at, to this truth. To me, Ma'at is truth. I mean, most simply put, Ma'at, and there's a lot of different manifestations and a lot of different ways to approach her. To me, she is truth. Naked truth. Truth that is absolutely indescribable. As the unpronounceable name of God would be sort of an analogy. Yeah.
So obviously Nema had an experience where she received a bit like, I guess, Crowley with I Was. She had a sort of a similar transmission. Could you talk to that a little bit? Because this became is it Libra Penanabra?
Yeah, the book of the feather. Yeah. Yeah. That we were sitting, well, that picture before, we're sitting around the table. It's like, well, nothing new is coming out. It's like everything's being repeated and this, and this. And Maggie just sort of opened herself up, and those words came through.
Mhm.
She was sort of the scribe, wrote them down, gave them to me and to Joe, my partner with Black Moon Publishing, and we went, yeah, this is new. This is something new that is important for the community, because what we were doing was repeating
Mhm.
over and over and over what Crowley did, what Akkad did, what all the other people did. This is something that draws on the tradition, but recognizes that we're at a different time.
Mhm.
That we're at a different time and reflects that different time. So we published it, and she ended up, of course, in Kenneth Grant's organization. I think he probably saw the journal, or she sent him a copy of the journal. And then it just went on from there. Now, her contact with Mott, I would say the best thing that anyone can do, again, go back to experience. Don't believe a word that you
Mhm.
hear. It's all false. It's all bullshit. Go back to experience. Get a picture. Where is she? Here you go. Get something like that. Give her some coffee and ask her. She'll tell you.
Mhm.
She will tell you.
Another podcast, and I was going to bring this up with you, called Penny Royal. I don't know if you've ever heard of Penny Royal
No,
before.
I haven't.
Run by a guy called Nathan Isaac, and we've had him on the show. He's the Bate Cabal sort of came into he's looking at a thing in Kentucky called the Kentucky Anomaly, which is this strange kind of area around Kentucky that seems to have bizarre things happen around it. Like it has a strange energy. There's a lot of quartz in the earth underneath there as well. So it's a very sort of potent kind of place. And at one point, a series of magicians turned up and stayed in a place called the Beehive, which
Mm-hmm.
is like I've seen pictures of it. It's like a wooden structure, and it's in the field of I think it's like a farmer's field or something. It's in a vast field,
Okay.
and he thinks that might have been Nema and Co. The Bate Cabal, because the Bate Cabal at the same time were dealing with something called the Cincinnati Vortex. And
Yeah.
could you talk to us about the Cincinnati Vortex? And I'll be passing this on to Nathan as well, so because I know he's really interested in this.
Yeah, that is very, very possible there. And oh my God, let's see. Kentucky is a part of where I was raised, the Appalachian Mountains. And the Appalachian Mountains have such a rich tradition of spirituality.
Mhm.
And there are such power places there too. I'm wondering if that wasn't a gorge that we went to
Mhm.
and worked down there.
That's where he became interested. It's um, this tale in that area of a group of magicians um, staying in the Beehive, this place called the Beehive, for 2 summers, I think, and performing some kind of ritual in the area, kind of thing. I was wondering if perhaps you might be able to shed any light on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would advise him to look up Serpent Mound.
Serpent Mound.
Kentucky here, you got Cincinnati here, then right up here, you have got the largest Ophidian earthwork in the world.
Mhm.
It is immense. I have done so many rituals there with Maggie. A lot of the work, and as you're talking about the First Peoples, it is a place where originally, like geologists say, the topography is so different from the area around it. It was hit by something, a meteor or something, just blasted it out.
Mm.
And then there was another big blast. And some of the magicians that I am in contact with believe that is this largest Ophidian, the largest snake. It's a big, 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 big. That was a snake entering the earth. The
Mhm.
first one, the crypto explosion, which is documented. You can even see the area so different. And the second explosion was it leaving.
Mm.
And it is a tremendously sacred place. Tremendously sacred place. I go there, and when I go there, which was maybe about a month ago, Horace Lodge really uses Serpent Mound. When I went there about a month ago, you show respect. This is something I really want to say, that if you go into the New Orleans Voodoo Spiritual Temple and you want to go to the temple and you say, walk in and say, where's the temple? Somebody might throw something at you. That's very disrespectful.
Mhm.
You know, you come in, you introduce yourself, and again, you sit and you say, I would like to see the temple. So I go up there. When I go to Serpent Mound, I go and I sit in the outside area and just give honor and respect to the people that build it, all the thousands upon thousands of baskets of earth that were used to build this immense effigy. And again, it's the largest on our planet image of a snake, an earth image of a snake. And Maggie and I and Bate Cabal, and I think these people that you describe there, members of those, would go to Serpent Mound at certain times, offer honor and respect, do ritual, and collect water from the region, which we called venom. And
Mhm.
we would use that in rituals, and we'd use earth, not from the mound itself, but from around the mound. You don't want to
Mhm.
desecrate the mound, that's a sacred, from around the mound. And the experiences that were described by you a little bit before, I am sure it was either us or a group that we were in close contact with.
So
Yeah.
it's possible you came down to Pulaski and did, did some more work down there, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And again,
Okay.
1970 or something like that. A good time away. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what? So I did some reading through the Horace Smart Lodge website, which is great. It's really well documented. But what is the Grove of the Star and the Snake?
That, to my knowledge, Denny Sargent, a group out of New York City, made contact with the Martinié Current, came down. This was a long, long time ago, and did rituals at Maggie's farm. And I was there for that. And that was the Grove of the Star and Snake. The main person operating right now is Denny Sargent. He's a good person to get a hold of. He's
Hmm.
a great practitioner. He's very, very, very much into uh, werewolves now.
Yeah, I saw an interview of him recently, and he was talking about werewolf. I think he had a book out, didn't he, recently?
Yeah. And that was like a precursor to the Horace Mott Lodge.
Hmm.
And all of the I've got some old papers, yeah. Yeah, and a lot of that, I hope, is up online and available to everyone. That's one of the beginnings of the Horace Mott Lodge. Yeah,
Hmm.
along with Bate Cabal and other groups.
So in some of the writings I've seen of Nema, someone called the Shadow is referenced quite a lot. Who is the Shadow? Or is that?
If I remember, that is the person that told Nema that she couldn't practice magic.
Ah, okay.
When she first came over to the house and introduced to everybody and and this, and they ended up upstairs.
Mm.
And yeah, and that's when he said to her, "Well, this is all very cool. I'm glad you like it, you know, but women really can't practice magic." Got her into it, the shadow. Yeah. Uh, I don't think it's violating confidentiality to say his first name was Gary.
Okay.
Very, very, very close friend.
Mhm.
Very close friend and strong practitioner. And the last thing I heard that he had done is a number of years ago, he got a little trailer and went out into the desert.
Mm.
went out into the desert in the western United States of America, and that's the last thing I heard.
Mhm. Hopefully he's well and thriving.
Yeah, in one form or another. He might be a cactus for all I know at this point.
So you mentioned it earlier, and one thing we've been kind of covering quite a lot on the show recently is Kenneth Grant. How did that connection start, and what was the relationship like throughout the period of like Bate Cabal and you know, I see, because at some point at least Nema and several others joined the Typhonian OTO, didn't they?
Yes, yeah, they
Mhm.
they joined. She got into contact with Mr. Grant, and they were exchanging letters back and forth, a lot of which I guess I have here.
Mhm.
And there was a there was a personal relationship that was very, very strong. Then at one point, Mr. Grant started talking about uh, whatever it was called, the Forest Mott Lodge or whatever it was called then at that point, as a part of the OTO.
Mm.
And he says, well, we're really not a part of the OTO. At that point, that more order kind of relationship quieted down,
Mhm.
and the personal relationship continued, though, in
Mhm.
letters for years and years after. She wrote him that something about the mob zone.
Mhm.
That was something that she was visiting. She wrote him, and he was doing work on the mob zone too. And it was like, oh, the mob, yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
where things come together. Yeah. And it went on, I really believe, into Mr. Grant's passing.
Mhm.
And she was in London, met him, did this and did that. And then he put out a book, one of his first books, and it was about the workings, particularly centered on Mott, and a lot of people that were in Bate Cabal were in there. And we went through and looked at it and says, well, historically, there are things in here that don't quite come together.
Mhm.
So we wrote him, and he wrote back and said, well, I'm creating a mythos.
Mhm.
And I thought, how beautiful to take the raw happenings, which may or may not have happened. I mean, our senses are so limited, but we
Mhm.
said happened, and then create a mythos out of that, a vast, vast territory that one can go into and just see all these things. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think what's interesting about Grant to me and is that he's very interested in. We were talking about this in our last episode actually with Tomas Vincente. He's very much interested in the kind of the art of the occult, isn't he? Like he's not trying to he's not presenting you with an initiatic guidebook or a grimoire. He's telling you about his experience. He's sort of introducing you to ideas and sort
Yeah,
of artistic ideas rather than like Crowley. He's not trying to kind of give you a template for magic kind of thing. He's kind of it's almost like he's reporting back from the wild. That's kind of what I like about him.
putting back from the what, and
Mm.
that goes right into a new publication that we're working on. Black Moon Publishing is working on with an Indian adept, a surgeon, medical surgeon that has studied the original text of non-dual Shivism, and we're going to be doing about an 800-page book. He's a scholar. He could speak Sanskrit. He could read Sanskrit. He studied the old text, and he is very knowledgeable in terms of Kenneth Grant's work.
Mhm.
And one of the things that is in that book is that Grant, while there were movements away from the original Indian system, that he left enough there that one could look at his work and it would point toward this non-dual Shivism. In one of the letters between Maggie and Mr. Grant, he says that he prefers the Indian system
Mhm.
to the Tibetan or the Chinese or the Japanese system because it's more exact.
Mhm.
And this book that we're putting out is a seminal text of that system.
Mhm.
So, and we're just really lucky to have come across a Indian adept that is also knowledgeable in terms of Western occultism and is just got to be brilliant to do like 800 pages and also be a medical doctor. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to have him on the show if he's doing shows. I don't know,
Oh,
but
okay. Who
yeah,
is?
yeah. Well, I'm sort of. Did you guys put out the diary, the magical diary of Nema?
Yes, we
Yeah,
did.
yeah. Yeah, so I have one of your books. I need to expand my collection of Black Moon
Yeah.
books actually. So I'll start to have a look through and figure out maybe people we can have on the show definitely. But the one thing that I found really interesting was where does Nema's or the kind of Horus Mart Lodge version of Mart sort of cross over with Arkad's version of Mart? Because there does seem to be a crossover point there. And was Nema in any way kind of influenced by, or were you guys kind of influenced by
Yeah.
Arkad?
Frater Akkad, absolutely. His books. Yeah. And one of the last things, this was only maybe like 10, 15 years, well, it was maybe more like 20 years ago. Uh, the person that was then the outer head of the OTO gave me a document that that has the call to Mott that an opening of the new eon, an opening of the new eon that Frater Akkad did. And it's an old lithograph. And that's someplace up there with the Horace Mott Lodge. So I gave it to them, yeah, to put up in that. And that that looking toward a new age, that realizing that the tree of life went in all sorts of different directions, wasn't static, was changing. Frater Akkad. Yeah, and then we actually did, Black Moon Publishing did, he put, was it Corazon Club? It's the Corazon
Hmm.
Club. Yeah,
Yeah.
that we did oh, do I have a copy here? Handy? Probably not. I've got so much stuff that we did the Occult Digest. We began the Occult Digest again with a man named Norman Caseberg.
Mm.
And he was one of the original ones that did it. And this is where Akkad did the what was it, the Hellfire Club or something like that, where he asked
Mhm.
people, yeah, he said, "Do you want to join?" Yeah. So we wanted to continue that tradition. So just maybe 15 years ago, we put out an issue of that, large issue
No,
of,
okay.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting. The one thing as well I read about a few times on the Horace Mart Lodge website was that about this idea of time travel magic and this idea that Mart is somehow projecting information from the future to the past to help the past almost. Could you talk to that a little bit?
yeah. I think that goes back to that working so long ago at Oz Farms,
Mhm.
where Naton showed himself, this Magus from the future showed himself to the three of us. And the three of us coming together going, there was something there that we hadn't planned on, and it was pretty strong,
Mhm.
and it's the three of us, Herb, myself, and Maggie. And that there is a force in the future that is very interested in our development, and it is possible to contact this force, Naton. It's a good name, Naton.
Mhm.
Contact contact Naton and get messages or in some way assistance from
Mhm.
this entity. Yeah. And what is Naton to me? Naton to me is, oh my God, wow, wow, the voice of all my descendants striving to attain, striving to stay alive. And that voice speaks to me. And that is Naton to me. Now, to other people, it could be like an individual that comes back in a human body, an individual in a male, female, both body or whatever, or a feather or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But that there is a force there, whatever you want to call it. What I call it is all of my ancestors going, hey, here, do this and this so things go well, things go better. Yeah.
I've heard it described as an omega point as well. Is that the right language though? Naton and the omega point. It comes up quite a few times on the website.
Interesting. See, my main practice is New Orleans Voodoo. I'm really not familiar with the omega point. I'm in the 11th star working.
Mm-hmm.
Right now I'm doing the Ains, which is my main thing, and the Assad. The idea being that each of the Sephiroths has a throne, and if those thrones are occupied, things will go better. There'll be more communication between, say, this force in the future and now.
Mm-hmm.
And that my main practice is New Orleans Voodoo, but I am very involved in the 11th star working because I want to see it. I want to see the Horus Mott Lodge. This is just a little personal thing, which may mean something or may mean nothing, but I want it to see it become what I would call a complete system.
Mm-hmm.
And a complete system goes beyond into the Ains and provides a sense or an experience of being pointed to the Ains, of that vast, alive, creative force that generates the tree. Yeah.
One thing I was really struck by this because I've looked into the Typhonian order as well, as it's now called, and it's interesting that both groups, like the Horus Mott Lodge and the Typhonian order, favor self-initiation over a kind of taught initiation, or like kind of structural initiation, with a group and with a, so why does the Horus Mott Lodge prefer self-initiation over more traditional, I suppose, initiation?
Again, my guess is there are so many strong adepts involved in that. Now, my part in that may be with New Orleans Voodoo, self-initiation that you can confer, that you can confirm rather than a confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
That, I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, that you've always had it.
Mm-hmm.
You've always had it. It's not something that someone can give to you. It's always been there. And if someone says they can give it to you, maybe you better watch out because it's usually accompanied by something that you've got to give them, which could be monetary, which could be obedience, which could be this, which could be that. And if you get something from another person, there's always that, well, they didn't do it right. This is the way you should do it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they're not from the proper part of Haiti. You didn't get it you got it in Port-au-Prince, so that doesn't count. That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is something that New Orleans Voodoo and the HML share, and I might have been a very small part of influencing the HML in that direction. And what the hell? They might have been a very small part of influencing me in terms of New Orleans. That.
I do find that the reason I think I find these, as I was saying, kind of Crowley adjacent groups more interesting these days is it feels like, and I was talking about this in the last episode as well, with Thomas. It's something very restrictive about certain magical orders that kind of they don't grow, do they? They don't. It's almost like they experience all this stuff, but they don't add it in to the pot. It's sort of stuck. They're stuck with this kind of profit system, with this kind of. Do you understand what I mean? Like, kind of, it feels like HML and probably voodoo and all these other things. They pull things in and they grow, and
Yeah, that I was at. It's called Babylon Rising.
Mm-hmm.
A big festival. very strong Thelemic festival, and there was a good size OTO presence there.
Mhm.
And one of the things, I was talking to one of the people there, was probably head of one of the camps or something like that, and we're talking about innovation, and he says, that isn't what we're doing. What we're doing is preserving.
Mm.
And at that point, I went, oh, yeah, okay, I got it. I got it. You're preserving. You don't want to, all these other groups like us, like HML, like whatever, very innovative, very creative, very creative.
Mhm.
And it is so good to have a group like the OTO where they say, no, we don't want to add from it or take away from it or even expand it. We want to preserve the teachings so that
Mhm.
someone can go back. And it's difficult because I talked to an academic, a historian at another one of these festivals, and he says, yeah, you can preserve the documents, you can preserve the words, but it's very difficult to preserve the actual meaning because the actual meaning is embedded in a cultural context that is no longer there.
Mhm.
So it's a balance, and I really respect the OTO with that, and well, with HML, that there's no initiation fees, there's no this, there's no that. One of the things with Bate Cabal, particularly when we first started, is that any grade, we just had a little manifesto, a manifesto that said any grade, any attainment is accepted by those to whom it can be demonstrated to. So if say you're this great Magus, then you're this great Magus, fine. If I feel it, if I see it, okay. If not, then okay too. Maybe somebody else will. In other words, there's no piece of paper that says I am this master of the temple. That
Mhm.
you go, look, I'm a master of the temple. It's like, do it, be
Mhm.
it, be it. Yeah, yeah. Then people will recognize it.
Now, I do respect the OTOs. They sort of they do at times become a bit of a historical society, if that makes sense. There's almost like a bit of an identity crisis there. They're kind of part Magick group, part Aleister Crowley kind of preservation society or something. But I wonder what Crowley himself would have thought of that, because he was quite the innovator. He was very, he went out and actually into the world and pulled all these different influences in to create his system. You'd imagine if he was still around today, he'd still be doing that. He'd still be wanting to pull in new innovations and add it into the tableau of kind of Thelema. But it just feels like, I don't know, it feels like something's been lost there to me. But I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think so too. Crowley is a major ancestor.
Mhm.
Let's see. Let's see. Triangle. Oh my God. Get off my back. Oh, okay. Get off my Don't weigh me down.
Mhm.
Don't weigh me down. I am a creative spirit. I move. I move. My essence is movement. Okay, the gateway is closing. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, okay.
Mhm.
Okay. I don't absolutely agree with that as an entity sitting here because I value in saving, that
Mhm.
kind of thing. And it does point in a direction that is pregnant with movement.
Mhm.
So I can see both sides. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So before because I want to go talk a bit about voodoo with you as well, but there was another, yeah. So you spoke about it earlier. This kind of ever evolving ritual of the 11th star, because that's a big major work, like a great work within the HML, isn't it? So could you talk about the kind of origin of that and kind of the evolution, I suppose, of that?
That started, you know, I'm not very good with dates, but I believe that it started at about 1985 at a festival that we were going to do a ritual. I talked to Maggie. We talked to other people. Marty LeBach is a big one. He's a retired social psychologist, and at this point, and what are we gonna do? It's like then the idea Maggie came up with it of having people in the tree of life in each of the Sephiroths. I did Binah, and I was Binah, and other people were Had, the different Sephiroths, Malkuth, and people would come in and they'd walk from Malkuth all the way up, and they'd make contact with each of these Sephiroths. And our job was to channel the current of that particular Sephiroth to become that particular Sephiroth and give people the experience of the tree. That was the beginning. What it went to from there was a worldwide working in which people did not like take the position of the Sephiroths and have people walk between them to experience that, to something where the people from all over the world took a different Sephiroth and channeled that so that the thrones, what Maggie called the thrones were filled, which made it easier for, say, in a very particular sense, Naton to communicate, forces from the future to communicate. And this, the Easterners call it suchness, existence as it is to flow more easily into who we are now. So it sort of mutated or evolved is probably a better word, from a working that included maybe 15 people that were setting it up, and then maybe 40 or 50 people that walk through the Sephiroth, to a worldwide working that was pretty much open to everyone. And people, like, you do a magical record afterwards and you share that, and points come up, maybe in terms of future direction. So that's the evolution there. That is how that worked. That's the evolution.
And that's still continuing to this day.
Oh yeah, yeah, here, there. I mean, because it's like I don't close after rituals. It's like, yeah, just let it there and let it build up, let it build up, let it build up. And this last one was maybe 6 days ago, 7 days ago, 8 days ago, and it's still there, and its spirits are still very strong. It is absolutely still continuing and has great power.
And if people want to kind of get involved, they can contact people. Yep, through HML. Okay.
HML, yeah.
So that's horusmartlodge.com. So for people that are interested.
Yeah.
I have one last question regarding, because it's always it's in the HML website, but why was Nema and the Grove of the Star and Snake, why were they expelled from the OTO?
That expelled is a strong word, because I don't remember a lot of that sort of connotates animosity. And if I'm thinking of letters too that were exchanged, and I think it was simply that Mr. Grant wanted to consider the Horus Mott Lodge or Grove of Star of the Snake, those groups, which it could say members, really, just different names, as a part of the Typhonian.
Oh, I thought, because from the website, it seemed like it was the traditional OTO, the Caliphate OTO, that had expelled Nema and co from the mainstream. But
I have no memory. The contact was with the Typhonian OTO. And then, of course, the Typhonian OTO and the street legal OTO here. got into a legal battle over
Oh
names,
yeah.
things like that, and all that stuff. The actual expulsion is, I remember from the correspondences, I remember from talking to Maggie and stuff like that, was just simply that, no, we are an independent organization. We're not part of the Typhonian OTO. We are
Okay.
a brother or sister organization working very, very closely with tremendous respect. And that afterwards, that the very formal order communication pretty much ceased, and the letters, which some of them are here, and some of them, Michael Stanley, of course, Michael
Hmm.
Stanley, magnificent person.
Yeah,
That letters,
friend of the show. He's been on a couple of times.
oh my God, yeah,
I love Michael. He's great.
yeah, that he and that these letters still kept a very friendly tone.
Hmm. Oh, that's
And
good.
we're working with him now on doing something called My Dark Mentor.
Hmm.
We will publish more of those letters.
Yeah, he mentioned that in our last interview of him, that there was a book of correspondences coming out of Kenneth's work. So
Oh
yeah,
my God, yeah, yeah,
yeah. So
he's great. He is just great. Yeah,
it's amazing what he's done, keeping the Typhonian trilogies out and available. And I think there's been a real rise in interest in Kenneth Grant recently, and I think partially it's because people were interested in the work, but also because he's done such a great job at getting the work out there. You know,
yes,
yeah,
yeah. Crowley's
yeah,
work was almost lost. Yeah,
yeah,
it wasn't out. Then it came out, and it's like, okay. When I started out with Crowley, you couldn't find a copy of the Book of the Law.
no, yeah.
No, you could not.
And it seems like nowadays it's very difficult to get hold of some key Crowley texts still. You know, for whatever reason, the ATO aren't publishing them. Like The Vision and the Voice is a good example.
Okay.
I don't have a copy of that book anymore, and I can't get a new copy of it. It's really frustrating. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's a shame. But anyway, let's talk about, because I'm going to throw my hands up. I'm a complete novice, an ignoramus when it comes to voodoo, and I've always wanted to know a little bit of information. You know, get a bit of a taster of what one can expect if one was to, walk down that path. I was wondering, could you? I mean, you've told us about how you became interested in it, but
Yeah.
how does the kind of organization of it work, as it were? How does it work, basically?
I guess the first thing I'd say is that voodoo is a sort of a blanket term.
Hmm.
It you could think of it, as analogous to Christianity, and there's all kinds of Christianity. It goes
Hmm.
all the way from the fundamentalists who say you've got to do this, this, and this, and you better be out there converting people, and you've got to listen to the Bible. The Bible is the word of God. To the Unitarians who are more like, let's look at it. Let's look at it.
Hmm.
Let's look at it together. Voodoo is like that too. New Orleans voodoo to me is the wild child of voodoo, in that it emphasizes the practitioner's relationship with the Loa above everything else. In other words, confirmation, confirm it, but you don't initiate. The initiation is already there. The relationship is already there.
Hmm.
And that there's the African voodoo, very, very traditional, like Dagba Hunan, whom I had the honor of meeting, being hugged by. He was taken as a child. The priests walk through the village and take children that they see potential in, and people hide sometimes their children. He was taken and
Hmm.
raised as male and female. Great, great big man. I was the only white person there. And I thought, okay. And he comes up to me. Beautiful, beautiful there. And it's very, very traditional. There is that. There is the Haitian voodoo, which again has a strong element of initiation and tradition, which is valuable. And then there's the New Orleans voodoo, which says, okay, if you got the relationship, you got it. If you don't have it, you don't have it. here's some things maybe you can look at to maybe to try and get it, and to make a decision there. Because some people really like the strictness. You do this, this happens. You do this, this happens. Some people like to sort of being thrown into the midst of it and flailing around and finding stuff. That's more the New Orleans voodoo. And in terms of Christianity, it's a lot like, well, the more traditional forms like the Roman Catholic Church. You've got a head, and this head tells you what to do and how to do it, and da-da-da-da-da. And there's tremendous value in that for some people. And then you've got the Christians that say, well, you establish your personal relationship with deity. And what we're saying with New Orleans voodoo is you establish your personal relationship with deity. Because nobody can tell you, if some people can't, if you can't be told that you got it, you can't be told that you don't have it.
Mhm.
You know it's there. It's part of you. It is such a part of you. So to pick a voodoo that you're really, really into. And if you're into New Orleans voodoo, you don't have to be in New Orleans. Read about it. You can do that. You can get a sense of what the city is like. And then if you can, make a pilgrimage. Come to New Orleans. Come to what it is now, the New Orleans Voodoo Spiritual Temple with Priestess Miriam. And there's a flavor there. And if you want to catch that flavor, listen to the present Dr. John Mack. Listen to Gree Gumbo Ya. That kind of, there's a sense. There's a sense there. It's the swamps and the bayous. And if that attracts you, then go right to that. But whatever you go to in terms of the voodoo, be very, very careful that you aren't sucked into something step by step by step that leads someplace that you don't want to go. Someplace that you don't want to go. My personal practice now does not include animal sacrifice. I would imagine hundreds upon hundreds of animals that I've sacrificed originally. And then I came in contact with a teacher, an Eastern teacher. And he said, okay. And given an infinite number of incarnations, every being you come in contact with was at one time your kind mother. And I thought, oh my God, what am I doing? Sacrificing these beings who at one time were my kind mother. Stop the animal sacrifice. So that's one of the things you want to look at is, does the group sacrifice animals? And what the hell, I've got leather on. Science says, again, they call them sacrifices. They call them sacrifices. That was from a medical concern. Yeah. When they do their research, they use animals and this thing. So I'm not saying good or bad, this or that. I'm simply saying that for me, I stopped when I experienced that, not only heard, but experienced every being as being my kind mother, and to look at the groups that you're in and where it's going. If are they authoritarian? Are they very open? I'm very much more into an open group. And if you want to get just a good sense of New Orleans voodoo, the best sense, I believe, go to New Orleans and go to the New Orleans Voodoo Spiritual Temple, which I've been in service to. Priestess Miriam, he has the biggest heart. Just the times that I've been there when someone's grandmother was dying and they had no money. Who was dying, and she said, bring her over. I was there. She says, I'll sit with her. I'll sit. Beautiful, beautiful heart. And the temple itself is so strong, so full of all of this, the energy of New Orleans voodoo. And Dr. John Mack, this present Dr. John, really saw the temple as, do you know Dr. John, the musician?
I've heard of him. Yeah, I think there's some videos on either the HML or the Black Moon YouTube channel.
Yeah. He is just such an amazing, all these awards and this and that. It just really embodies the spirit of New Orleans voodoo. And oh God just comes to mind. One of the last things I put up is he's getting ready to be king of one of the parades, and he's got a mask over one of his eyes, eye patch, I should call it, an eye patch, which points toward the deities, the barons. And after he wore that, and he was at the parade, then he came back, and after the parade, he said, this is the first time I could hold the deities and the barons in my head at the same time. And I went, okay. But that's a sense of that current, the music, the dancing, and the openness. New Loa are always being created. New Loa are always coming down. It's a matter of opening oneself to them. And you'll find that in New Orleans voodoo. If you like that kind of structure, if you want more the organized organizational structure, then I would go more toward the Haitian and the African voodoo. And at the same time, don't listen to people who, if you go that right, they challenge your initiation, because I have heard African voodoo is saying, oh, the Haitian initiations are not real. You got to get it in Africa. And I've heard Haitian adepts say the New Orleans or whatever initiations aren't valid. You got to get them in Haiti. No, if you go that way, honor it, honor your masters, honor your teachers, honor your teachers. And if you decide to leave, honor them, leave, and try not to speak badly about them.
Yeah. So we briefly spoke before we started recording. Michael Bertio is obviously, he seems to have a slightly different take on it, doesn't he? Or at least, a different tradition almost.
Tremendous influence. Initially, I think it was 1976, we were doing a series of rituals that were really, in many ways, based on his work, where we would have the temple, and the person that wanted to go through the ritual was bound, and very tightly bound, and the people around him would come in and call the spider Loa to feed on the person in the middle. And then we would leave, and they'd come in. And my experience in terms of being in the center, because I was in both positions, was that these Loa will teach you very strongly. They will eat all that is not necessary to you as an individual, as an entity, not an individual, but as an entity. They will strip all of that off. And that drew heavily on Bertio's work. And Waters of Return, I think that's a title that I did. Yeah, a small chapbook, my first one, I think, that I put out. Yeah. And that has that ritual in it. And it's the spider Loa, and I love the insect Loa. The spider Loa was very powerful at that. Yeah, you want to go quick. You want to get it and very quickly get a blessing. That's it. Let them feed on you. Yeah. Yeah.
So who do you reckon? So if people are interested, I mean, I know I'm interested in learning about it. If I was interested in looking into New Orleans voodoo, what kind of publications are there? Where can I go and and do some learning?
I think one of the best, New Orleans Voodoo Tarot, which I did with Sallie Ann Glassman. It's about 50,000 copies so far out, and it's pricey. So I would go to the library. A lot of libraries have it.
Mm-hmm.
And just look at it in the library, read it, and if it appeals to you, go on from there. If it doesn't appeal to you, go to someplace else. That book, to me, really honors the spirits of New Orleans. And the other one is Gumbo Yaya, which comes from the workers' a federal program I believe it was during the Depression, that they sort of pump money into the economy by giving money to people to do research.
Mhm.
This is like, it is I think it's from the 1930s, right around the 1930s, and get a copy of that or find it online or get it at your library because it's probably very, very pricey now. That'll give you a sense of New Orleans voodoo because it's oh my God, there was a play called Equus, very, very good play about horses and that. And the person that wrote it, part of the dialogue was, whatever city you're in, look very closely. There are gods everywhere. There are gods in the moss. There are gods under the tile roofs. There are gods looking at you from the live oaks. Every city has its own gods. Look closely. You will find them and you will find more. And that's like New Orleans voodoo. Just look at it, the gods of that particular city, the way of the swamp, and that it's underwater, which I believe makes it easier to see the spirits because it's literally underwater. Most of the place that I've lived in, you look up, there's a levee, there's a boat, there you are down here. And yeah, yeah.
So if people want to, well, first of all, tell us what Black Moon have coming out in terms of publications. That'd be good to, find out what you have coming.
What we're working on right now is two books are paramount right now. There's one about the non-dual Shivism that influenced Kenneth Grant. And we want to get that out because, like you said, the interest in Mr. Grant's work and him saying that this is what he was drawing from.
Mm-hmm.
This is, again, by an Indian adept. That and the an edition of the Lovecraft Tarot that was initially put out by Mandrake Press. And Joe, whom I work with very, very closely, is just going hell over wheels on that. I mean, it's like just before I got on, I was like looking at emails going back and forth between the originator of that and Joe. Those two books will be coming out very soon. And one thing I'm really interested in too is, I believe it's the ambassador to Lithuania is also a folklorist and occultist.
Mm.
And she is doing a book with us about the folk magic, the magics of that region.
Oh, wow. Interesting. That'll be interesting. Yeah.
And of course, Michael Stanley, my dark mentor, just, it is so personal seeing those letters. It is so personal handling those letters.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to put out the talisman, a living link between the reader, Maggie, Nema, and Kenneth Grant. There it is, back and forth, back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. I can't wait for that. I think that's going to be fascinating too, because there's a small section of that at the beginning of the Magical Diary of Nema, isn't there? There's a correspondence.
Yeah.
From Kenneth Grant, and yeah, I really wanted to read more because that felt like one part of a longer, conversation, and I was like, I really want to see what else was said here. I think it's going to be an interesting read.
Yeah,
it's going to be great. Anyway, thank you so much for giving us some of your time. We will definitely have to. I said this to our last guest as well. We'll definitely have to. I feel like we've only scratched the surface of what we can talk about.
There's so much more. There is.
Yeah. So we'll have to have you back on sooner rather than later. And thank you so much for